Hello, everyone. How you doing? Good. Well, let's talk about the economy, shall we? And let's talk about this whole 2020 vision. Are we seeing things through nice, clear lenses, or are things cloudy out there? And there's a little bit of both, without a doubt, that is happening there. So I know that Ryan is going to talk all about the national, the international levels, but I want to just set the stage a little bit by talking about national GDP and our periods of growth versus contraction at a whole national level. So if you look at this chart, this is GDP then showing the quarterly changes. What we see right now is that we are in the midst of the longest economic expansion in modern U.S. history. We're now at 126 months. The prior longest expansion in U.S. history was that period from 1991 through 2001, which was a period of 120 months, 10 years. And there's going to be a few instances where I'm going to refer to data from that 1990s period of growth and comparing that to today so that we can keep in mind where we're at and potentially where we are headed. We're going to take a look at what's happening in terms of employment and commercial real estate here first, and then we'll start taking a look at what's happening with consumers and residential real estate. So when we take a look at our employment and commercial real estate, right now there are some things that we know we can see very clearly. We are in an environment of stable interest rates. It's hard to find workers. You've heard me talk about this before, and it still is very challenging to find those workers out there. We are seeing wages that are going up and still a very active construction market. But there are some things that are kind of clouding our vision too when we start making our business plans and all. The tariffs, the trade war certainly is having an influence on some of our Colorado businesses. There's this whole geopolitical risk all across the globe, certainly. An uncertain future for oil and gas, which is an important industry here in Colorado. And also, as JJ had kind of alluded to, this whole anti-growth initiative that we all are going to need to be having the conversation about growth. And so I want to raise some of the issues about that. So first of all, to put Colorado's growth in context here, throughout the country, we're seeing growth in 47 of the states. There are 3 states, Wyoming, Oklahoma, and Vermont, that are actually still kind of shedding some jobs there, but everywhere else is seeing growth, and those states that are on the darkest color are those that are experiencing the strongest level of growth. Our neighbor to the west, Utah. Yeah, we keep close tabs on what's happening in Utah because they are very competitive here with us in the Metro Denver region and in Colorado on both the business front as well as a tourism front. They are right now adding jobs at the fastest pace in the U.S. Texas number 2, Idaho number 3, and Colorado we are currently ranked at number 10 in terms of job growth. So our expectation as we look out into 2020 is that, yes, we will continue to add jobs in Colorado and in Metro Denver, but at a slower pace than what we have seen over the last few years. So think back, if maybe you were here, maybe you weren't, but back in 2014, that was kind of the peak period of growth in this cycle for us here in Colorado. During that period of time, Colorado added about 83,000 net new jobs. Metro Denver added about 55,000 net new jobs. The growth rates that we are seeing now are putting that job growth level at about half of that pace. So certainly still growing, still expanding, nice steady pace of growth, albeit, as I say, at a slower pace. And the expectation is that we will still add jobs at a faster pace than what we see happening at a national level. When we look throughout the state of Colorado, so our metropolitan statistical areas, or basically our urbanized areas across the state of Colorado, there are 7 of them, and these 7 MSAs constitute 17 of our 64 counties. So what's happening within these urbanized areas? Well, first thing to note, Boulder. That Boulder County area is expanding at the fastest pace right now. They're seeing job growth related to the high technology industry up there. Software is certainly expanding very rapidly in that region. Google, of course, has been the big headline up in the Boulder area. Greeley, which is Weld County, is also growing at a fast pace. And you will say, well, wait a minute, didn't you just say they have kind of this uncertain oil and gas future? Yes, there are some challenges related to oil and gas, but they're also seeing there in Weld County, they have a strong base of renewable energies with Vestas located up there. So really diversifying that economic base and continuing to see some good, strong growth up there. Then you get to Fort Collins, Colorado Springs, and Grand Junction, all increasing at about the same pace right now. Fort Collins also being driven by high technology. Colorado Springs, to a degree, that as well. They've really become, though, this opportunity for companies that want to grow and expand at a little cheaper rate. They're a little less expensive than perhaps some of our other Front Range areas. And also cybersecurity has been a big industry down there. Grand Junction, yes, yay. They're growing, they're expanding. And a lot of that is also due to retiree attraction there. In Denver, here the Metro Denver region, we're growing at one of the slower paces. And we'll talk a little bit about our job growth and what's driving that in just a moment. And then just to highlight Pueblo there, that is kind of our urbanized areas, that is the slowest growth area in the state of Colorado right now, still having trouble kind of diversifying from the whole steel industry there. So that's where we're at now. I want to take that step back to the 1990s. So in this map of the state then, the red parts represent hot, blue is cold, and that's going to be the case in a few different maps that I'm going to show you here. So in the 1990s, notice that we added about 680,000 jobs. That was a 3.7% average annual increase in employment. That was huge. I mean, we're now tracking at about a 1.6% pace. And there were 2 counties that lost employment during that whole 10-year period. So that was Lake County and San Juan, and between the two of them, they lost less than 100 positions over that period of time. Fast forward now to the current economic conditions, the current growth that we see. And remember again, red is hot, blue is cold. So in this current 10-year period of expansion, we have 23 counties whose employment base is lower today than it had been 10 years ago. Most of the growth that we see happening is indeed happening along Colorado's Front Range. Indeed, 99.2% of the jobs that have been added in this 10-year period have occurred in that region from Larimer and Weld counties all the way down into Pueblo County. So, and to notice too that our employment growth rate is averaging 1.5% right now. That is half the pace of growth that we saw during the 1990s. So yes, let's have the growth discussion. Let's talk about how we manage growth, but certainly let's also keep in mind that one size does not fit all within our state of Colorado, and that there are many parts of our state that are indeed being left behind in this longest economic expansion in U.S. history. So in the Metro Denver region, taking a look at what types of jobs, what type of industries are expanding, this is all based on what is called the North American Industry Classification System codes. All companies that are operating are classified in one of these. These are aggregated up to super sectors. Professional and business services is our largest industry grouping, and that includes everything from accounting and legal to a lot of your software design and also architectural opportunities there as well. Our largest group has also been the one that has added the most jobs and is expected to add the most jobs as we look out into 2020. That's great news because professional and business services are providing those services to all other businesses. So if they are doing well, it generally means that all those other businesses are doing well also. On down to our smallest industry, which is information. That's print media, that's broadcast media. That also includes some of our high-tech sector, where we see some companies, the lines are getting very blurry right about now. Talk about cloudy vision, but where we classify some of those high-technology companies. Are they information providers? Are they software providers? It is getting very, very hard to sometimes classify some of our companies. But that group is our smallest group and has seen some reasonable growth over the past year and is expected to continue into 2020. Notice that the third one from the top there, wholesale and retail trade, is our slowest growing industry. On the other hand, the third from the bottom, transportation, warehousing, and utilities, is our fastest growing industry. I bring both of these up because transportation, yes, it includes air transportation, but that whole warehousing, that's our logistics industry that is really driving the growth of this. That's the Amazon effect. So keep in mind that as we have talked about how we're starting to see some changes as far as where people are spending their dollars, whether they're going to brick and mortar stores, whether they're doing online types of purchases, we're starting to see those shifts and changes coming through in some of our employment data here because we have certainly seen a large increase in logistics and e-commerce companies and their fulfillment centers that are located here in the Metro Denver region. So one of the greatest challenges to our continued expansion in the Metro Denver region and indeed in the state of Colorado is finding workers. If you're out there trying to hire anybody in your companies, you know how challenging that can be right about now. So notice that our labor force participation rate, which is basically the percentage of our population that is either working or actively looking for work there, is kind of reaching a point where we're seeing some real stabilization in that. It used to be that we thought, okay, we can grow the labor force, we can pull people in from the sidelines that for whatever reason we're no longer participating in the employment market. We've kind of tapped that out right about now. So our expectation is that unemployment rate is still going to be very, very low. So key point to all of you that are making hiring decisions, get those good workers. Do everything you possibly can to hang on to those good workers because our expectation is that this labor market is still going to be very, very tight. So one of the good news for those employees out there because of this tight labor market is we're seeing some nice increases in wages finally. That may not be good news if you're the business owner because this may certainly be putting some cost pressures on you there. But right about now, so from the period from June 2018 to June 2019, Colorado had the second fastest increase in wages in the country. We had a 4.9% increase in our average annual wage. Notice that the other states that increased very rapidly were Washington and California, but all states all across the country did indeed see an increase in those average wages. Hitting upon our commercial real estate then, taking a look at office, industrial, and retail, I have on the chart here both our vacancy rate as well as the average lease rate, what is happening over time. In those healthy markets, we like to see that vacancy rate going down, that average lease rate coming up. And certainly we are seeing that on the office side, although we're starting to see then that the rate of decrease in the vacancy rates is slowing, the rate of increase in the lease rates is also slowing. On the industrial side, starting to see a little bit of pop-up in terms of that vacancy rate. On the retail side, we're also seeing that vacancy rate increase a little bit, but on the retail side, we're also seeing that the lease rate is coming down a little bit. Again, kind of mirroring some of the issues that we're seeing in terms of our brick and mortar retail throughout the Metro Denver region. The big story remains construction activity when we talk about the commercial real estate markets. Oh my gosh. 2018 was a peak year in terms of adding office, industrial, and retail throughout the Metro Denver region. We added 11 million square feet. We saw a little bit of pullback in 2019, mainly because we still had a lot of buildings that were under construction, just not being completed, versus now as we move into 2020, the amount of completions will be around 10 million square feet once again. So it remains a very active commercial real estate market. So turning now to consumers, how you and I get out there, spend our dollars, and our influence on the residential real estate markets. Again, a lot of things that we see pretty clearly that are influencing our spending patterns with stable interest rates and rising wages. We have an aging population and a slowing growth in our population as well. But the cloudy side, consumer confidence, we're seeing consumers are getting a little shaky out there. That's a bit of a challenge, and I think that that's going to be something that Ryan is going to talk about in a little more detail as well. The anti-growth initiative, again, how this will influence what we're seeing happening in terms of housing affordability and new home construction. Just to keep in mind from a whole population side, a population growth side. So in this period from 2010 to 2019, Colorado was the third fastest growing state. If we take a look at just the most recent year, from 2018 to 2019, Colorado was the eighth fastest growing state. We are starting to see this whole slowdown in terms of our growth pattern, not just here in Colorado, but indeed all across the country. In the Metro Denver region specifically, our population grows because of two things. We have a natural increase in the population, meaning that our births are greater than deaths, and we see a net migration influence, so a number of people moving in, less the number of people moving out. We're seeing some slower net migration. Again, this is happening all across the country, but certainly happening here as well, with fewer than 10% of Americans changing their residence in that period from 2018 to 2019. This was down from a period of time like in the 1960s where you had about 20% of the people. So definitely we're seeing this whole slowdown in migration activity, and so therefore we are also seeing a slowdown in our population growth. So rather than adding on average around 45,000 people here in Metro Denver, our expectation in 2020 is that we will add less than 38,000 new people in the area. And again, the whole growth discussion, we talked about employment growth, and people generally, when they talk about growth, they're like, oh yeah, we like the jobs, we just don't like the people that come with them. They're related. They are related here. And certainly when we take a look at population growth that is happening, again, in that 1990s period, we had 5 counties that shed people, but growth was pervasive pretty much throughout the state. Fast forward to our most current growth period, then the last 10 years, we see that 20 counties in Colorado have lost people. 13 counties, which are in that light blue, have basically been flat. So 33 of our 64 counties are either losing people or seeing a flat type of population change within their area. But let's also have the discussion that one size does not fit all, and we need to really be tackling the issues of managing growth appropriately. So that was my soapbox. Okay, moving on. Consumers. We've been out there, we've been spending money, but we're also seeing, as I had mentioned, that our confidence levels are not quite what they had been. So back in 2017, our confidence levels were increasing by 26% over the course of that year. In 2019, and our expectation for 2020, in the mountain region, our confidence is increasing by only about 1%. Yes, we are still at very high levels of confidence, but we're starting to become a little more timid here. Remember, this also tends to be related very closely with what we see happening in terms of retail sales activity, retail sales tax, important for our state of Colorado, important for our communities. So again, another big takeaway from today, be happy, people, spend some money, okay? Keep us going. Our consumer activity represents 70% nearly of our overall economic activity. If we are out there and are feeling confident in our actions, chances are the economy is going to do okay as well. All right, the one thing that has been a bit of a challenge, though, certainly has been our home prices in Metro Denver and throughout the state of Colorado. So right now, that Boulder MSA is the 7th most expensive housing market in the country. They see a median home price approaching $630,000. Metro Denver, you've heard me say this before, we're no great bargain ourselves. We are the 11th most expensive. The good news, though, is that we are seeing those home price appreciation rates start to slow. Now, if you're a homeowner, I get it that you're saying, oh, Patty, I don't like that news. But truly, from an affordability perspective, making sure that our workers can indeed afford homes here, move up in homes, this is very good news that we are starting to see those appreciation rates really slow to about 3.5%. And we're starting to see then that we're seeing that our home appreciation rates are better matching our wage rates, the increases that we're seeing here. Remember, wages going up by 4.9% in Colorado, according to the most recent data. Again, our expectation is housing prices will be up by about 3.5%. The reason that we're seeing that more stable increases in all of our apartment lease rates as well as our home rates is that we have finally kind of caught up, if you will, in terms of new construction within our marketplace. There had been a period of time when we were building next to nothing, but we still had a growing population. Now that we have been building a couple of years, we've seen number of new units introduced, over 24,000. Our average is around 17,500 or so. So we have been building more than our average, which is why we're starting to see some of those prices start to stabilize, which again is very good news for our area. So with that, be happy people, spend money, keep the economy going, okay? Thanks much.